is Carrie, and I am the Youth Services Librarian at McMillan Memorial Library in Wisconsin Rapids. And we are going to be exploring the world of frittata and quiche today. This episode is called Frittata versus Quiche. And frittatas and quiche are fairly similar. They're made with very similar ingredients. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what makes them different from each other, where they come from, the history of them, what things they have in common as well. So first of all, I did a little research, as I usually do, just to give you a little bit of background on the foods we're going to be making. So we're going to start with the definition of frittata. And according to the Oxford English Dictionary, it is a thick, well-cooked Italian omelet typically containing a selection of meat, cheese, potatoes, etc., usually mixed in with the eggs during cooking and served open rather than folded. Traditionally, frittatas are cooked entirely in a pan on the stovetop and not in the oven at all. However, more recent recipes for frittatas instruct you to cook the frittata almost all the way through on the stovetop and then to put it under the broiler in the oven just to finish cooking the top of the frittata. So that's what most recipes call for now, and that's what we'll be doing today. It's an Italian dish, so frittata comes from an Italian recipe, but there is some thought that they actually got the idea for frittata from the Spanish. The Spanish have what they call a tortilla, and it's basically the same sort of idea. It's eggs with potatoes that's fried in a pan and flipped over and cooked on both sides, and it's delicious. So that's where they think that maybe it originated. So that's what's going on with the frittata. So a quiche, according to the definition given by dictionary.com, is a pie-like dish consisting of an unsweetened pastry shell filled with a custard and usually containing cheese and other ingredients as vegetables, seafood, and ham. Quiches, apparently, quiche, the word quiche is French, right? So everybody thinks that French developed the quiche, but originally a quiche was from Germany. It was from a German-ruled medieval kingdom called Lothringen. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. The origin of the word quiche comes from the German Kuchen, which means cake. And eventually the French kind of took over that region, and they also took over the quiche and named it Lorraine. They also kind of put their own take on a quiche, and they added cheese and other various ingredients just to make it their own and make it better, of course. Quiche also became very popular in the countries of Great Britain and the United States. After World War II, the troops that were stationed in France during the war ate quiche regularly in France, and they loved it, so they brought the recipe home to their home countries, and it became really popular for brunch and lunch and dinner and breakfast here too. So those are kind of like the history, background, definition of what each of those are. The major differences between a frittata and a quiche are that frittatas do not have a crust, and they're cooked on the stovetop. Frittatas also have a little bit of milk or cream usually, but just a little bit, and a lot of eggs. So they're a lot eggier. Quiche usually has some sort of crust, a pie crust or puff pastry, something like that. It is more of a custard than a straight egg dish. So there's a lot of cream and or milk and a few eggs. It also cooks entirely in the oven, and it cooks for a longer period of time. The similarities between the two are that they can both have a variety of fillings. Their fillings are very similar often. So you can put whatever kind of meat you like in there. The meats that work really well in a frittata or a quiche are sausage, bacon, ham, chicken. Those sorts of meats go really, really well in it because it's usually a brunch type of dish. So those are the kinds of meats you think of for brunch. You want to make sure whatever you put into your quiche or your frittata is cooked before you put it in, because a lot of these things have excess water in them, and so you need to kind of cook out the water, some of the water, so it doesn't make your dishes watery. And also, the frittata isn't in there long enough to really cook meat through all the way through. So you want to make sure everything is pre-cooked. We will be doing that with ours today as well. Ours are vegetarian today, but we still want to make sure everything is cooked before we put it into either our frittata or our quiche. Both of these can be served hot, warm, or cold. It's totally up to you. Some people like to eat them cold, as a snack in the middle of the afternoon or whatever. And they can be served any time of the day, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And they are really popular brunch dishes here in the United States. So you'll see them a lot of times on a brunch menu. As I was saying, you can really use whatever types of ingredients you have left in your fridge that you like. You can use meats, cheeses, vegetables. The sky's the limit. Make it yours. Use up what's in your fridge. That's what I'm doing. Much of what I've got today is, stuff that I had in my fridge that I really need to use. So for today, we are making a frittata and a quiche, and I'm going to really put similar ingredients into both, so I'm not kind of reinventing both of them. I'm just going to go over our ingredients for today. So for the frittata and the quiche, we have some bell pepper that I've got chopped up. I've got some zucchini. I have got some Havarti cheese. It's a kind of a soft cheese, very mild. That I shredded, and that's going to go into the quiche. I've got some goat cheese that I kind of crumbled up, and that is going to go into the frittata. I've got some spinach. I've got some green onion. And I've got eggs and cream and milk. So for the quiche, we're going to use 3 eggs, 3/4 of a cup of milk, whole milk, and 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. For the frittata, we are going to use 6 whole eggs and 3 tablespoons of heavy cream. And for the quiche, I am using puff pastry today. I had some in the freezer, so I took out a sheet of puff pastry, let it come to room temperature, and I pressed it into a buttered square casserole dish. So that is going to be going into the oven. We're also going to need a couple of bowls to mix our ingredients. And we're going to need salt and pepper, of course. You always need salt and pepper. We're going to need a pan to cook our veggies in before we put everything together. And we're going to need a pan to cook the frittata in. I am using a cast iron pan today. We're preheating our oven for the quiche to 375. So that is ready to go. The first step in making both of our dishes today is going to be to cook our vegetables ahead of time. So I have got a skillet heating up on my stovetop right now. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil to my pan. Let that warm up a little bit. That looks pretty good. And the first vegetables I'm going to add are the zucchini and the peppers. They take a little bit longer to cook than the onion or the spinach. We're just going to mix those around a little bit. Get them started. I'll make sure they're coated pretty well in the oil. We are cooking the veggies just till they're kind of softened a little bit, cooked through a bit. So I've got the pepper and the zucchini that are pretty well on their way now. I'm going to add the spinach. Spinach doesn't take very long to cook, and that will cook down quite a bit. There's a lot of water in spinach. And we're also going to add our green onion. Those also don't take very long to cook. So we're just going to mix all those together. We're going to wait until the spinach has wilted and shrunk down a bit, released its water. Since this is all going to be mixed together anyway, we can cook everything together. If you're, depending on what vegetables you're cooking, you want to think of cook times. So like I did with the zucchini and the pepper, I know that those take longer to cook, so I put those in the pan first, let them cook for a little while, and then once they were almost done, I put the spinach and the onions in, because those don't take as long. If you were adding meat to the dishes, you would want to make sure that you cook the meats ahead of time. If you're adding bacon, you want to cook the bacon and cut it up into smaller pieces. Likewise, if you're using sausage or ham, you want to cook that ahead of time and then cut it into smallish pieces, bite-sized type pieces, to go into either a frittata or a quiche. So as you can see, the spinach is wilted down quite a bit. Everything else looks pretty well cooked. I've cooked a lot of that water right out of there. So that will not affect the eggs by making them watery. So there we are. Vegetables are ready to go. We're going to turn off our oven, our stovetop. We're just going to let those vegetables kind of hang out there for a little bit while we make the rest of our quiche. We will be now making the base of the quiche. We need 3 eggs, 3 whole eggs, 3/4 cup of whole milk, and 3/4 cup of heavy cream. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to crack our eggs into our bowl. All 3 eggs. And I'm using large eggs, which is fairly standard in cooking. Most often that's what you will find in American cookbooks anyway. Okay, so we've got our eggs in our bowl, and we are going to whip those up until they're smooth. Look pretty good. And we're going to add our cream and milk mixture to our eggs. And we are going to whisk those together until they're combined. The recipe I'm using today is a Martha Stewart recipe for classic quiche. And I actually divided this recipe in half. Her recipe originally made enough filling for 2 pie crusts, and I'm only making a small size pan, so I divided that in half. So just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from. So we've got our eggs and our cream whipped together, and we are going to carefully pour that into our pastry shell. You don't want it to be overfilled, so that is coming up near-ish the top. It will expand a little bit, and we do have some other ingredients to add, so that'll kind of boost it up a little bit as well. And then we're going to add our cheese. Like I said, this is Havarti cheese that I grated. And it's a pretty mild cheese. It's pretty soft, but it's not, it doesn't have a huge amount of moisture in it, so it should be okay to use with the crust. So we've got our cheese in, and we're going to add some of our vegetables. So we'll just get those in there. Oops. Getting a little sloppy. So for this recipe, it calls for starting it in the oven at 375 for 10 minutes, and then turning the oven down to 325 and cooking until it is set. So I really don't know how many minutes that will be. So we will have to kind of do a little trial and error with this and figure out how much time we're going to need. So I'm also going to season this with salt and pepper at this point. A little pepper, some salt. You could also add some herbs into this if you wanted. If you like to add basil or thyme or rosemary or oregano. You could add all kinds of spices if you'd like to do that. So we're gonna just add salt and pepper, keep it really simple today. I'm going to now put this, you see, so once I added the cheese and the veggies, it is coming up very close to the top of that pastry. So it's a good thing I didn't have more filling than that. We're going to put this right into the oven now at 375 for 10 minutes. And I'm going to turn that down to 325 after 10 minutes. So in we go. Timer for 10 minutes. We cooked our quiche at 375 for 10 minutes. Once that 10 minutes was up, I turned the oven down to 325 and I set the timer for a half an hour. Wasn't exactly sure how long it was going to take. I checked it at 30 minutes and it still wasn't quite set in the middle. So I put it on for another 13 minutes and I've just checked it. It looks pretty well done in the middle. So we are going to take that out of our oven. Make sure you always use your safety. Make sure you use your oven mitts. All right, we're gonna slide this out. There we have it. That is our quiche, which is made with a puff pastry, and this is a vegetarian quiche. It has a mixture of vegetables we sauteed, and it also has some Havarti cheese shredded inside of that as well, a little salt and pepper. It looks delicious. It smells delicious. You could eat this for breakfast, lunch, dinner. If I make it for a meal, for let's say a dinner or something, a lot of times I'll serve it with a salad or something on the side, maybe an extra serving of vegetables, just to kind of beef it up a little bit. And you do want to let this cool. I just took this out of the oven. You want to let it cool for about 10 or 15 minutes. It's really, really hot on the inside. So we just want to make sure that it's cool enough to eat. So yeah, let it cool for a little while. If you like it just warm, you could obviously let it cool even further if you would like, and then serve it up. We are finished with the quiche part of our cooking segment today, and next we will be showing how to make a frittata. We've made our quiche, now we are going to make our frittata. So the first thing we're going to need is a whisk and a large bowl. We're going to take our 6 eggs and crack them into our bowl. Oops, a little bit of shell in there. Get that out. All right. We're also going to add our 3 tablespoons of heavy cream, and we'll whisk that all together. I also right now have a cast iron skillet preheating on the stove top. That I chose cast iron because it retains its heat very well, and because it is oven proof. So after we cook the frittata almost all the way through, there's going to be part of it on the top that is kind of a little bit raw. So we are going to put it under the broiler for a few minutes just to cook that top part. I'm just gonna rinse my hands here quick. All right, so we're going to break these yolks a little bit, get it started. Why is it that when you want to break a yolk, they don't want to break, but when you're trying to keep them together, all they want to do is break? I don't know. All right, there's the cream. So we're going to whisk that together. You don't want to whisk it too much, just so it's combined. All right, that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do next, since our pan is getting hot, it should be pretty hot by now, we're going to add about a tablespoon-ish, maybe a tablespoon and a half of oil. I've just got plain old olive oil in there. I want to make sure that's going to coat the pan, the bottom of the pan, so that our eggs don't stick to the bottom. So I am going to just tilt that around a little bit, make sure it's coating the bottom of the pan nicely. And you see I'm using my oven mitts. This pan, like I said, it keeps its heat very well, so it also means that it gets very hot. So we want to make sure we don't burn ourselves. All right, now we're going to pour our egg mixture in, like so. I'm just going to grab a spoon here, make sure I get all of that in there. Perfect. Just like so. And I am going to use my oven mitts again. I'm going to just tilt my egg a little, make sure it's coating the bottom of the pan. And at this point, we are going to add our vegetables that we cooked. Just kind of sprinkle them into the pan so they're kind of even throughout the eggs. Just like so. May have to poke them around a little bit with our spatula. Make sure they kind of fill up the entire pan. There we are. All right, and then the next ingredient, the last ingredient we have today, I've got some goat cheese, and I am just going to sprinkle that in to our frittata. Again, kind of put it kind of all over. And this egg is cooking pretty fast. Eggs tend to cook pretty fast. I might just turn my heat down just a little bit to maybe a more of a low heat. Once the pan reaches its hot temperature, it will stay pretty steady, so we can turn the heat down a little bit and still be just fine. All right, so get our cheese getting there here. A little bit more. If you don't like goat cheese, that's fine. It's kind of one of those things. I think you either really like goat cheese or you really don't like goat cheese. I happen to really like goat cheese, so give it a try though. It's a different type of cheese. It definitely has a different flavor to it. I didn't like it the first time I tried it, or probably the second or third times, but I do like it now. So give it a try. See what you think. And we're gonna add a little pepper. And again here, like the quiche, you could add different herbs at this point if you wanted to add some Italian seasonings. And if you make a quiche that has more like southwest flavorings, you could add cumin or something like that. So it just depends, if you put maybe put cheese and jalapenos and maybe some taco meat in your frittata, you could have different different flavors of herbs and things in there. Different cheeses. You could use pepper jack in that case. So what I'm doing is I'm just lifting, lifting my frittata around the outside edge slightly. I'm trying to get the runny egg to kind of get underneath and cook. So we're going to tilt it as we hold part of the egg up. We're going to tilt the egg to try and get the uncooked egg from the top to run underneath and cook. Oops. A little bit of cheese under there. Probably don't want that. All right, so we're just going to cook it a little bit, just until the top starts to cook a little bit, so it'll look more dry along the edges, and then we will need to put it under the broiler, because the middle section is going to take probably some broiling to get that cooked. Usually around the edges you can get it pretty well, but I think the middle is going to be the problem. So you want to keep moving it a little bit though to make sure it doesn't stick, so you can get it out of your pan nicely. If you don't have a cast iron skillet, that's fine. You can use any kind of skillet that you have. You want to make sure that if you are planning on putting it under the broiler to finish the cooking, that it's a pan that can go into the oven. I would not put my nice non-stick skillet in the oven. I don't think it would be very good in there. So, you know, make sure that it's something that you can use in the oven. Our frittata has been cooking for a few minutes, and it's kind of still a bit runny on the top. So we are going to put this under the broiler. All ovens are a little bit different on how the broilers work. My oven, I need to put the broiler on and then put the food in and then close the oven door. A lot of ovens, you leave the oven door open while you broil, but not this one. So we are going to get this started. And my pan is hot, remember, so we're going to use our oven mitts. And cast iron is particularly heavy, so we want to make sure that we have help if we need to have some help opening the oven door and putting that in. Cast iron is very nice, but it is also very, very heavy, like I said. So if you're carrying a really heavy hot pan, make sure you have help if you need it. So we're just going to let this broil. We are still broiling our frittata, and I just wanted to kind of mention what a broiler is. So a broiler is a heating element that is at the top of your oven, and it heats food from the top down, and it's usually quite hot. So if you're trying to toast something, or if you're trying to, let's say, roast some tomatoes or something, a lot of times you'll put them in the broiler, is that will cook them from the top at a fairly high heat and cook them pretty quickly. So that is what we're using right now. We've got a few seconds left, and this should be done. I am going to make sure I use my hot pads, and we're going to turn off the broiler, open the oven, carefully slide our rack out, and that looks completely finished. So here we have our frittata, all cooked in a frying pan, mostly cooked on the stovetop, a little bit under the broiler. It looks nice and done. The egg is all finished cooking, and it's even browned up a little bit around the edges. So we're going to slice this up, and we're going to have a nice frittata dinner. We're going to have a little side dish with it, and I'll probably have some for lunch tomorrow as well. So enjoy making your frittata or your quiche or both. And make sure you make it your own. And join us next time on Let's Make Lunch.